Cool. All right, we're live.
Woo!
How's it going, man?
All things considered, pretty good.
Yeah,
How about you?
pretty good. Just trying to make it work, man. It's been 4 months since. You know what's funny is in this conversation
Yeah.
where we're starting this call from. The last message I sent you was March 9th, asking you if we should do Wednesday at noon for lunch. And like
Nope.
that was literally like the week that everything just turned off.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, man, it's been a weird couple months. Things are strange. And you and I both work in the same industry too. You are, for people who don't know, you're a Melee TO, and you started
Correct.
Smash Camp, one of the best Smash majors out there. And major only because it gets so ridiculously stacked with top level players.
It did last time anyway. We were crested on that regional major boundary a little bit.
But it's also like capped.
Yeah.
Um,
It can't really be bigger than it is now in terms of sheer numbers, right?
yeah, for sure.
There's only so much space that we have available to us at the venue itself.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like it could never be like a major, but at the same time it's so stacked up with talent that
It's got its own like category, it seems like.
it really
almost.
does. It's the most original event out there, I think. It's like that and Smash and Splash in terms of just original events that are unique and have a really good gimmick.
Yeah.
So
that was the idea.
Yeah, exactly. So you started Smash Camp, and then you now work for Bravous Esports as I mean, you're like a coach and a tournament organizer. You're basically like run the whole operation, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like I wear like a lot of hats, which is kind of how I like it. I've kind of always seen myself as somebody who is like sort of jack of all trades, master of none in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's cool that esports lets you kind of do that sort of thing. Like I've talked about before how like when I was growing up, one of the things that first of all I wanted to be a basketball player.
Really?
But well, yeah, absolutely. I loved basketball when I was growing up. I still do, but I was like that was where I wanted to like be. And of course that doesn't happen.
The dream was not a
but
reality.
I grew up like watching a ton of the Suns, obviously, and like listening to Al McCoy on the radio. And so I was like, yeah, it would be really cool to be that guy also. And I don't know. I've been doing a lot of reflecting in general lately, just given all the shit that's happening. And like one of the things that I think is really cool about like the opportunities that esports afford to people is that like we're here at a time where you kind of can do that, like
Yeah.
you can find yourself in these niches that are made more accessible by the fact that like this is a thing that is only in its like 20th year of existence, even if you count like I think what is it, there was like a Quake tournament in 1997 that's technically considered like the first esports tournament
event.
I think it was called like Red Annihilation or something, and the winner won a Ferrari.
Oh shit.
So even at your most like extreme of estimates, like esports is only like a 23-year-old industry.
The
Which
winner
is
of that tournament won more in value than any Smash player has ever won in the history of Smash.
Probably
combined.
Inflation adjusted, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like that's kind of the position I find myself in, because like I don't know, like I'm a TO, I'm a commentator, I like to play. I'm certainly not a top level competitor. Yeah, but like, yeah, that's kind of where I like being, is in that space where I can kind of like have my fingers in a bunch of pies.
Yeah, and you've done a really good job at that. Like you said, you're a commentator, you're a TO, but you're not like super deep into any of those things to where it's like a full-time job for you. So you still have like that kind of flexibility.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is good, because in this environment, it's not good to be a TO and it's not good to be a commentator, really.
That's true, dude. I did a little bit of a Rona Rumble commentary this weekend, and it was fun, but it was also like very informal. and
Yeah.
I certainly didn't get paid for it.
Yeah, for sure. No, I don't
And-
think any commentators are getting paid anytime soon. Like even when events come back, dude, the events are going to be on such tight budgets that the last, like for me personally, the last thing I'm thinking about is if I'm going to pay a commentator from out of state like $500 to commentate 3 days.
yeah, but I mean, like, if you think about it, it's kind of crazy. Like something like Ludwig, what Ludwig is doing is like what we have been hoping for
Yes.
this whole time.
Yep.
It's crazy because we talked about it back in like the 2015 days when Dylan Sprouse was commentating Project M at Nebulous.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like who's going to be the person to step up and advocate for Smash on the larger scale of things. And Ludwig goes out and gets the Raid Shadow Legends bag
Yeah,
and
somehow.
just throws. He's gonna give Fizzy just straight up $5,000.
Is he really?
Yeah, that was one of the goals that they hit last night, was just to give Fizzy $5,000.
Wow.
But it is like, it's super weird in Smash. It's very tough. Me and Jeffrey were actually kind of like, he kind of convinced me actually that like we were talking about what facets of different esports games you would throw together to make the perfect esports game. And one of the categories was like community support from a developer end. Guess what Jeff picked?
For the
Guess
game
what
that
game? Yeah. Guess what game Jeffrey picked for that?
that has developer support from the community end.
Like, yeah, that. Guess what game Jeffrey picked for like that aspect of this hypothetical game that we were putting together?
League of Legends.
He picked Melee.
Melee?
He thinks that it's better that Melee just got left alone.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean
And
it might be,
ultimately,
honestly.
we might see it pay off, dude. We might just see that because like the limitations that people have talked about with Melee for so long are one by one just slowly getting stripped away.
Yes.
The future is like, it lives in Melee, which is so ironic and so weird.
Yeah, very strange. I mean, I was talking to Sark Knight the other night when I was doing my Valorant stream,
Yeah.
and I was doing 1v1s, and he was we were talking about the fact that like when ranked mode comes out for Slippy, it's gonna be like an even bigger evolution than rollback was, because you're
Yeah.
gonna have players grinding the same way they're grinding in Valorant. Like you'll be able to go and be on Twitch and say, I am an immortal rank Melee player, and that will mean something. And you'll have like
Yeah.
and people can grind for that on stream, and then like you'll be able to like very clearly measure a player's skill based on MMR, which is like, and to be fair, I don't know if there is a ranked mode coming out. I'm just assuming there is because there's an unranked mode, but it seems
Yeah.
like it's in the works.
It's in the pipeline for
Yeah,
sure.
for
It's
sure,
like
yeah.
spectator mode, ranked mode, stage selection are the three big things that are in the pipeline right now for Slippy.
Nice.
But like, I picked Street Fighter for that category, and my idea was that like if you have even a little something out there that can give you like a superpower, like a little boost, right? Like that's going to bring so many new people into the fold.
Mm-hmm.
Jeffrey's argument is that you would rather have a community that loves its game so much that it won't move on to the sequel unless it like satisfies the needs of that community. And I think he's kind of right.
Yeah.
I think like I'm actually like making it. I have like an entire script like of a video that I've written about this.
Nice.
So I'll like I can break it down right now, I guess.
Leak
But like
it. Unless you want to save it for your video. I understand.
It doesn't
You gotta
matter.
protect your content.
It doesn't matter. But like the thing is that like if you were to ask me right now which Smash game that I think you should get into, like literally 3 months ago I was having the thought, not 3 months ago, but like the day before Rollback came out, I was playing Smash Ultimate Online, and I was having the thought like, do I like this more than Melee Net Play? Melee Net Play kind of sucks for me. It's like stuttery, and I have to go onto Anther's Ladder and find somebody and like talk to them to be able to play them. And like Smash Ultimate, I don't have to do that. I could just fire up the game, and it sucks, right? Like there's a lot of delay and a lot of people play on Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
But I would like it was almost like that experience was better, and then like Melee just comes and blows it out of the water, and now somehow has like a top tier online fighting game experience. You know,
Yeah.
it's absolutely insane, and it like renewed my faith in what the Melee community is capable of from such like a dark place.
Yeah.
Where like I was like, I don't want to play in a Melee net play tournament, dude. It's gonna be an experience that is just not fun for me or anyone involved. Uh, but now the game's changed, and so if you ask me right now, like which Smash game I think you should pick up on July 13th, 2020, I would say Melee. And I wouldn't even say that based on bias because like 2 months ago I would have said Ultimate, right?
Yeah.
Like it makes more sense to pick up Smash Ultimate if that's like the hardware is a lot easier to come by to be able to compete on a competitive level. Uh, you know, it's the new game, so of course, like all the kids are playing it. But like, I don't know where Melee goes from here. But we have a chance to have sort of like a double whammy, you know, just like we did in 2013 with Evo, and then the first documentary coming out.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
this could be a repeat of that. I could see that happening where it's like rollback and then metagame comes out. And I know metagame's delayed by a little bit, but like there's still a possibility that it comes out this year.
Is there really?
Yeah, that's what Samok said anyway. He has
Okay.
to edit out a bunch of
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
he probably has
bunch
to
of
do a
shit.
lot of revisions
Yeah. Yeah, which sucks.
for sure.
And that's like also a shitty it's like this weird roller coaster ride if you're a Melee fan right now because you have like the absolute unbridled joy of rollback, and then you have like all of the shit, but you also have LACS, and I've been riding that roller coaster for the past 2 weeks, and it's wild. But the good news, I think, even about the bad shit, is that our community is going to come out better on the other side of it. You know?
Yeah, I think so. It's yeah, it's I don't know, man. It's crazy. It really is crazy. I do think that the community ultimately is going to come out better on the other side. But it's going to be weird cuz like the top 10% of the community is just kind of gone. Like a lot of the top players, especially the old school top like legends, they're gone. A lot of the top ultimate, like a decent, not a ton, but there's a good chunk of the top ultimate players are going to be gone. TOs are gone. Commentators are gone. It's going to be like starting the community over again. But in that way, I think it's actually good. Like it
Kind of,
just,
yeah.
it's almost like we've gotten this reset that we kind of needed. Like Melee got to this weird, like to this place, Melee in particular, but Smash as a whole got to this place where you had the like the rebirth of Melee after Evo and the doc, and then everything had just kind of gone uphill from there, and then it plateaued, and it was just plateaued at this place where like Nintendo won't put any money in. No one really has any money to put into it, like that they can just selflessly throw out there, just because they're like, you know what, I love Melee and I just want to dump a bag load of cash into it. And sponsors are kind of like there, but not like they're more interested in Ultimate. They don't care as much about Melee. And then there was like this kind of consolidation of like, like you're starting to see content consolidation between BTS and VGBC. And then in terms of the top level tournaments that there's like, it was kind of down to like, there's 5 really big tournaments and everything else is smaller. And then like Melee's interest was kind of waning downward, especially like with no like super legit way to play net play, even though Ultimate's online is really trash. And now we're in this position like where for Smash as a whole, where there are no in-person events. So we're on this long break. And then you have like this instance where you've had this kind of purge of a lot of the people who were anchors in the community. And so now there's going to be the need for new talent to rise in every category. Literally every single category, there's going to have to be new talent. New TOs are going to have to come up. New commentators are going to have to come up. New players, especially, are going to have to come up. There's going to be a whole new breed of players. And then on top of that, you've got someone like Ludwig, who was a diehard Melee player. And are those notifications still going off? You can't hear them, but for some reason, I'm hearing my notifications from my stream.
Stream probably can, yeah.
Yeah, because people are following. I don't know how to easily and quickly fix that because it's probably going off in a different window.
Follows.
Yeah, thanks for following, guys. Thanks for the Twitch Prime. Hey, if you're here and you're watching, drop a Twitch Prime and then go over to my boy Mikey's channel the_cheat.
And drop a tier 2.
Drop a tier 2 or a tier 3 if you're a real legend. Let's see.
I'll be waiting.
I'm trying to figure out how to turn this off. I don't know if I can. Well, you guys are going to have to live with the occasional chime. It's the first episode. Okay, we're working out the kinks. Yeah, it's happening. Whatever. But yes, so we're going to start seeing that kind of total rebirth. And you have someone like Ludwig now who just has the bag. And he was a diehard Melee player coming up. That's how he started. That's how he came up. And he loves the game. And so you're getting this really great mix of like people who absolutely love the game, which is something Melee and Smash needs to succeed, except those people are now in good positions financially and can help the game grow.
Yeah. The question is, like, where do the new players come from? That's always the question, right? It's like that's what made Melee like struggle, right? Because the new players, like, the answer was so clear that you should go to Smash Ultimate before.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know how much of this information about Melee is getting to your average like casual Smash Bros gamer. You know, I don't know where they're getting that information from. Like, if it's anywhere, it's probably YouTube.
In terms of just like information about tech skill and how to play the game better.
Well, information like, how would somebody know that like Melee is a greatly improved experience now from what they like probably knew it to be before?
Yeah, word of mouth is the big thing. So I read a book called the Power of Habit, which is a really, really good book that's literally just about habits, how they affect us and everything, and how powerful they are. And one of the things they talked about was this is going to seem really obtuse, an obtuse link, but they talked about the civil rights movement in the 1960s. And one of the habits they talked about were social habits. And there's things called strong links and strong ties and weak ties. And in the civil rights movement, you had strong ties. Strong ties are like two people who are very close to each other. So like you and I know each other really well. If you came to me and you were like, Shaq, like, we need to put on this Melee tournament next week, like, I would be like, let's do it, you know? Or if you came to me and you were like, you know, you should come back to Melee because they've greatly improved the experience, I would without a doubt just be like, done, you know? And then there's weak ties, which are like tertiary ties. So that would be if I like went to someone who, the exact example of that is JJ or Jamie when she went and posted in the Smash Ultimate page and the ASU Smash page and said, there's this new thing called rollback with net play and Melee. It makes Melee really easy to play. You can access Melee with a potato PC now. Please come and try it. And so those two combinations of things, that's when those two things are working in tandem, then that's how I think people will see that the experience is so well improved. I mean, so many people heard about it and picked up and started Melee because these famous Smash players, like, you know, were talking about Slippy and people were like, what's Slippy? And then they looked it up and then they're like, oh, this is so easy to get into.
Yeah. Yeah. I think part of it is like, how do you get to that point with someone in the first place? I don't know. Like, I've had a lot of conversations with people about like what I do, and I'll like say that, you know, I started playing Super Smash Bros. I started playing Melee, you know?
Yeah.
And like their response is pretty much like, I could never do that.
Like I could never play Melee.
Yeah, I think that's a huge problem, right?
Yeah.
And it's a problem that that like shouldn't exist, but does. Like I'm a huge melee apologist. I will defend even the most controversial of the mechanics in the game. I think wobbling's fine. I think L canceling is great.
Oh, canceling is great.
Yeah, I I like I'll tell this to people, right? But like what happens is people have like a very fixed mindset about things. And like so there's
Hmm.
obviously this huge base of players who know about Super Smash Bros and love the game but just are not willing to engage with it on a competitive level. And I think part of it might be not just the way the game is, but that like the community isn't necessarily doing outreach to those players, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, this is a conversation we've been having since like 2016, 2015.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always been an ongoing conversation, and you and I in particular. I mean, we had like dinners where we tried to discuss this with other members of the community and try to figure out
Yeah.
like what the best thing is. And like, I do believe, and this is something I've been spending a lot of time reflecting about Melee in particular as we move into this kind of new place, like because where SAK was concerned, like we were really falling off with Melee, and not intentionally, but like part of it was for me, like after I had a kid, because being ATO in general got a lot harder,
Yeah.
and Smash survives, in particular Melee survives off of the backs of people who are willing to basically do like astronomical amounts of work for free. Like they
Yeah,
just
and it's not institutions either, right? Because that's why Tucson isn't having any tournaments right now. It's not like
yes,
JBVH leaves and there's somebody there to pick it up in his stead. Like Melee, more than is comfortable for us to think about, exists because of the work of like a select few people,
yes.
which sucks.
It does. Yeah, that and that's the thing is like, and I think where SAK was trending was just like when once I had a kid, like I did not have the time or the resources to be able to dump into running tournaments for Melee like the way that I needed to. Like you just can't do it when you have a kid at home. And you'll I imagine we'll learn this eventually when you have a kid, Mike, like your time is gone, dude. Like you just don't have like and so like when Eric had come along and he now like, you know, to give him all the credit that's due, he has kind of taken over like the scene in terms of leadership, and I think that's actually really good. Because he can host an Arcadian where he'll put up however much money of his out of his own pocket for a pot bonus, and he'll pay for people's carpools and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
like I was not in a position to do that anymore, but as long as there are those people who will do that, then that I think is how the game will continue to grow. But that's also that's the double-edged sword, because people who do that kind of work make the game accessible for everybody because they try to keep it as low as possible to actually. And speaking of JBVH, he was always like a king about that. He hosted Rewired, and he never wanted the venue fee to be above, I think, $20 or something. Like he always just wanted to make it
Yeah.
cheap and accept as cheap and as accessible to everyone as possible. So those people, because they're doing the labor for free, labor, as I have learned, is the most expensive part of running a business or running any kind of operation. And
For sure.
especially like nowadays, where like, you know, you got to pay someone at least $12 an hour to make it worth their time. Like it's really hard. It's really hard to do that. And so the people who will do that for free are the ones who will carry it. But the problem is those people have a limited supply of time and ability, and when they eventually move to a place in their life where they don't have that time anymore, someone else has to step up, and you're really just rolling the dice hoping someone does.
Yeah, it sucks, but I think more and more, and this is the reason that I think people can be optimistic about esports in general and have it be like reasonable. I think more and more people are realizing that like this is something that can reach people who need to be engaged with something but otherwise are not being engaged. And some of those people happen to have budgets, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
Like there are some organizations out there, whether on like a collegiate level or a municipal level, nonprofit organization, what have you, that, you know, their mission as an organization is to engage people. And I think a lot of them are starting to realize that esports like needs to be a factor in that.
Yeah, that's something that I
Uh,
think we've both experienced in each of our businesses, that
yeah,
after the pandemic hit, there was this flood of interest in esports because all these companies that, like you said, that their mission is to engage people, were not able to engage people anymore. And they needed something that they could easily and quickly access. And esports was the number one thing that came up.
yeah, and like the hope is that because we've believed this even before the pandemic. We've believed that that's a necessary thing to do
Yeah.
before that time. Uh, so like the hope is that in like starting this momentum, that maybe people will continue to think that once we have sports that can be played also, like maybe
Yeah.
there's no reason why they shouldn't both exist.
Yeah.
um and so I think in general that's why things are going to get better for esports, and like the rising tide raises all ships, you know.
Yes, definitely.
So like hopefully melee like gets dragged along with that.
The hard part is, though, when you engage with those organizations, trying to explain Melee to them and then get them to buy into it is always hard, because they're like, this game is 17 years old and you have to play on these old box TV. I threw one of those TVs out last week. I put it on the curb
Yeah.
and I think someone stole it, but I didn't
Well,
care because it
that's
has
the
zero
thing,
value to
dude.
me.
I don't know how much you've been keeping track of like the advancements and not just like changing the online experience of melee, but changing how it's like processed. Like if you notice that, yeah, I mean you've no doubt seen it. Like the bottom right corner when you play on Slippy says delay 2 frames, right?
Hmm.
That's 3 frames faster than console,
Yeah.
if you'll believe it. And it's that way to like make up for whatever your monitor is doing, but like you don't need CRTs to play melee anymore. Like the people arguing that it's still a necessity are completely arguing from a place of like misinformation
Yeah.
and placebo effect.
Yeah.
You know, like you could play melee on monitors and it's going to be just as good as long as you have a good monitor.
Yeah, and that was something I tested really early back in the endgame days. I remember I set up a couple Melee monitor setups, and I had Jeff play on one against Meds, and Jeff was like, he's like, it feels fine. He's like, I still love
Yeah.
CRTs, but like it feels
Well,
fine.
yeah, but even since that time, so like it's not just like an adapter or
Hmm.
something, right? But you can actually change how the like emulator processes melee, because
Yeah.
inherent not just in the monitor or the TV, but in the console itself, in the GameCube or the Wii, there is a 5 frame delay. And they have found ways now to decrease that. So like
Yeah.
this exists on console, this exists on emulator. It's like it's even better than it was when you had those like Eon adapters or wherever you were getting those adapters from. Like the technology has gotten better on that front also, not just the online experience.
Yeah. And
Which
that
is it's a small part of the problem, right? Because it's still like if you're talking to somebody who is like an activities director for or like a rec director for a city or something, they're like, what the fuck is a melee, you know?
yeah. Yeah.
Right, but like I don't know. Like there are some kids out here who I interact with and they're like, it would be cool to do a melee thing, and I'm like, sick.
Yes.
Yes.
Let's do this. Get them while they're
Just do
young.
it. So even throwing out like other shit, like again, like getting someone involved in Smash in general, I think is I'm always looking to get someone on the hook for melee, of course.
Yeah, for sure.
Uh but uh yeah, there and I think like I don't know. The question again is like how do we get this information to people in a
I,
way that makes sense to them?
I think it's content. I think that's a big part of it. Like the doc,
That's yeah.
the doc is like, that was why the doc was so successful, is it was content. It was things that people could consume, and it just
Yeah.
spread like wildfire. And like, and that doc in particular was so engaging because it did something very rare in that it instilled the same passion for melee that we all have. Like the passion that you and I have for melee, it gave people that passion by letting them be part of the story.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of content, like I think after LACS 2, you're going to see a huge spike in interest in Melee, like even more so because I don't know if you saw it, but like there was a right after Rollback came out, Lud did a stream and he was talking about it and he was like, I want to talk about this. He's like, most of you probably don't even know anything about Melee, and he did a poll and 90% of his 8,000 viewers were like, he literally was like, so basically the pandemic hit and you guys are all just YouTube kiddies who found me because you didn't have anything else to do.
Yeah.
and like, so they didn't know anything about Melee, but he exposed 8,000 people to Melee by playing it on his stream and just being like, you know, there's this new thing and it's really easy to access. Just go to slippy.gg, download it, and you guys can all play it. Grab a GameCube controller or any controller that you are comfortable using, really. It doesn't have to be a GameCube controller anymore.
Yeah.
And I think after that, so like you saw that and you saw that from his stream. He has all these people that follow him in his content now who know nothing about Melee but will learn about it.
Yeah. And that's certainly like, that's the big one, right? Like people will watch anything that gets put in their YouTube algorithm. And so like you got to get it in the algorithm, but once it's there, it's pretty sick.
That is weirdly seemed to be the
Melee.
case. I've been like studying YouTube after like, because you and I we had a call last week where we were just chatting and I was picking your brain about content, and like one of the things I've come to realize is like YouTube is weirdly simple.
Yeah.
Like you look at people who have huge YouTube followings and you think like, oh, like they've been doing this for years and there's something special about them and like I could never do that. And then honestly, you look at Ludwig's content and you're like, so come up with something that's halfway entertaining and put a clickbait title on it. And then eventually you get in the algorithm and you're good to go.
Yeah, well that's that's what his YouTube video that he uploaded today is about. Is the formula.
Did he do that? Because so I actually tuned into his stream randomly, and he did like a 3-hour. How long's the video that he uploaded?
Oh, it's a long one actually. I could look it up real quick. It's 20 plus minutes.
The video, so people, for everyone watching, if you're interested in learning about YouTube, go to Lud's stream. It was the day that he did the poker tournament. So I don't remember. I don't know what the title was, but I think it'll have to be the card room poker tournament.
Yeah, this video is 34 minutes long. Yeah. Also, I'll put it in chat.
That piece of content he did was at least 3 hours when of the original content. We're not just talking about the formula. He was doing like a whole review of other people's YouTube channels, and it was like a master class of just like, here's how YouTube works, here's what you should be doing, here's what you shouldn't be doing, here's where everyone makes mistakes. Like, and he talked about like content and originality and his belief that there's nothing really original. So like, you know, you should just yoink people's content and kind of put your own spin on it, and it's okay to do that. Like he literally said that in his interview with Devin. I don't know his last name, but there's a streamer named Devin. I think it's Devin, who's does analytics. His whole thing is Twitch analytics and studying Twitch streamers. And he did a really good interview with him that Lud uploaded as a YouTube video where he talks about like, he's like, how do you come up with your ideas? He's like, I watch YouTube and I just take other people's ideas. It's like I tried every type of Pop-Tart the other day, and I got that from someone else. And he's like, I saw that, and all I did was I did it with my girlfriend instead of doing it by myself, and now it's my content, you know?
Right.
So, I don't know. YouTube's weird. But if you guys have not seen that, watch the video he just uploaded today, and then also go find his stream and just sit down and take notes if you're at all interested in content creation. And you should be.
And, like, YouTube has really, like, drastically changed from a user standpoint also. Like, I've been watching YouTubers for, a really long time now. Like, I was, like, a Vlogbrothers fan, a Wheezy Waiter fan back in, like, 2008.
Mm-hmm.
I would watch like Shaytards and stuff, like all of that stuff, right? And nobody in their right mind would go on YouTube and just click on the YouTube home button and watch the videos that were there. That was dog shit content.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. You always were searching for something.
Yeah. No, or like subscribing to people and watching videos that way. And one of the things that Ludwig was talking about, and he was talking about, like, for example, Simply's channel, the Super Mario 64 speedrunner, and how 80% of his viewers are not subscribed to his channel. If you told me that would be the case in like 2008 for somebody who is consistently uploading content, that would be absolutely insane to me.
Yeah.
Like, you, in that era of YouTube, you found the videos that were relevant to you by subscribing to people. That is the only thing that you would look at, right? For the
Yep.
most part. And maybe like videos related to those videos, or like stuff that those people would refer you to. Like, that had an immense amount of power on YouTube back in the day, is like who they were doing collabs with.
Yeah. Or
Um,
who was in their channel network and whatnot.
yeah, exactly. But now, like, I don't know. I don't fucking look at my subscriptions page. I just click on youtube.com, and the content there is like actually content that I want to watch, Which is pretty good,
Yeah,
right?
that's pretty solid. I mean,
Yeah.
I follow my subscriptions a lot, but like I'll also just be on YouTube and there will be something in the in the top videos bar where I'm like, oh yeah, I'll watch that or I'll throw that on.
Yeah. And that also, like, I guess that's my point, is like that's primarily how I'm finding the new content that I watch.
Yeah.
Is like through the homepage, through the algorithm, like what YouTube thinks I should be watching. So I guess, end of the day, they're doing a better job at that, which is good. It's just like different from how it worked back in the day. And Lud was even talking about in that, on that stream, like how things have changed. Like, in that era of YouTube, the wave was making short videos to make sure that people would like watch the entire thing, because
Yep.
clicking on a 10-minute video is probably you know nobody's got time for that shit. But then YouTube like changed their way of measuring things, so like time watched is a big metric that matters, so people would make longer videos. uh but now it's almost like coming full circle, and he said that like David Dobrik is like the guy who's sort of ushering in this new wave of making shorter videos also, and just counting on like racking up the views, because
Mhm.
if you get the views, then you don't really need the watch time anyway.
Yeah.
Like, it'll happen on its own.
Well, that's why I think we're in this kind of new era of like clickbait and stuff where the titles are really simplistic and they're just about getting the person to click. And if as long as you get the click, you're kind of okay, it seems like.
Well, yeah, and the
But
thing is that like you still need the sauce, right? Because
yes, yes, yes.
because like time watch still matters. So like if Ludwig's content was like dog shit, but he was really good at playing the game, he still wouldn't be doing very well,
Yeah.
because yeah, people wouldn't actually watch the videos, they actually wouldn't come back, they wouldn't subscribe, any of that stuff.
Yeah, the sauce is definitely important. My favorite one that he's done so far is the one he uploaded 2 weeks ago, and this was where he did that interview where he talked about it. But the do I make too much money? That was the best
Yes.
clickbait I have ever seen.
Yeah, that's a sick one.
And the content was actually super interesting. So like I clicked on it thinking it was going to be kind of like a PewDiePie video where like because PewDiePie, when it came out how much money he made a video being like, listen guys, it doesn't matter how much money I make, like I do this because I love it. If I didn't make the money I would still do it, etc., etc. So I was like, maybe this is going to be one of those videos from Let It. And then it was just a very engaging interview where he talks about channel analytics and like growing on Twitch and stuff. And I was
Yeah.
like, shit, it's got the sauce.
I mean, I think part of that is authenticity.
Yes.
Like Lud is definitely a character on stream, but people still view him as being somebody who will like talk about the real shit sometimes. Like he did that about the shit that's happening in the Smash community,
Mm-hmm.
which was great. I think he had a really good viewpoint, and something that was really helpful to say for his audience also. Because like, man, the parasocial relationship aspect of Twitch now is just so fucking weird.
Yeah.
Like, it blows my mind that people will actually pay to subscribe to creators on Twitch,
Yeah.
Like, they do it because they want to be this person's friend, essentially. And the thing is, like, Lud is really the only streamer that I've seen say, like, yeah, that shit's never going to happen.
That was interesting. Something I thought was super interesting where he was talking about community and he was like, listen, community's bullshit. he's like it's everyone talks about community and they're like, subscribe to me, we've got our own little community. He's like, that's bullshit. It's all bullshit. Like, it's a fantasy, you know?
Yeah.
And but that authenticity and that level of honesty, I think, is what makes someone successful in this day and age. I think that's what's like why someone like Joe Rogan is so successful with his podcast, because he's really authentic. Like, he doesn't censor himself. He says whatever he wants to say. He has whoever he wants on his podcast, even if they're controversial people.
Yeah.
And that level of authenticity is, I think, something people are really craving.
You watch cooking videos at all?
No.
There's this guy whose name is Adam Ragusia, and I'm a really big fan of him. He is like not a chef or anything. He's just a home cook, and he is like a journalism professor also. So all of his shit is like super well written. He had this really interesting video about uh, it was almost kind of like the Lud discussion, like how to write for YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
and make it so that people will like stick around to watch the video. And he talked about like, you know, the trade-off of like it's good to withhold information from people at the beginning of the video, so that they will keep watching the video, right? Because that's better for your analytics, that's better for your minutes watched. But also he made a video about like um what is and isn't safe in terms of acquiring your food during coronavirus,
Mm.
right? And how like going to a restaurant is probably like the worst thing you can do, like picking up groceries, delivery, like like what are the pros and cons of all of those things? Um, and he gave all of like the answers essentially to that video right up front. And usually that's not necessarily what he would do, but he felt that that topic in particular was important enough that like you want to make sure that if somebody clicks on that video, they're coming away with like somewhat of a complete picture. But
Yeah.
then the other side of that coin, right, is like, is it actually better to do the clickbait despite that information being so valuable? Because more people will end up watching that video
Yeah.
in total.
It's the moral
Uh,
dilemma.
so like, man, clickbait was vilified on the internet
It
for a
was.
really long time.
Yes.
Uh, but I think it's having a redemption arc for sure.
I definitely think
I'm
so.
Yeah, I definitely see the value in clickbait now, and that video in particular gave me a lot of. I'll have to send this to you because I
Yeah.
think you'll get a lot of uh insight out of how he talks about this shit. But like,
Yeah, link that
uh,
shit, cuz I'm studying, man. I'm trying to learn as much as I can from creators who are a lot more successful than I am. For sure. But it's like,
yeah,
it's weird because, like you said, it's having a redemption arc, and like it's also there's this certain level of understanding where, as long as it's kind of like, as long as you clickbait honestly, people forgive you
right.
for it.
That was the other thing, right? That he said that's actually why I brought that up in the first place. Is that he was like, what people used to see as like authoritative and somebody that they would listen to before is the very like formal tone,
Yeah.
and somebody speaking from a position of like, I am telling you what like the consensus is here, what the right thing is here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like people found that to be comforting at a certain point in time, and now there's been this shift where like what he's finding success with, and he talks about how he has to sometimes like write himself into weird corners when he tries to word things. It's like talking about his experience is being like not infallible, you know, like this is the stuff that he has experimented with and found to be good for him.
Yeah.
So he's not saying like you should do this when he's talking about his recipes. He's not saying like you should set your oven to preheat at 425. He writes everything from like a first person perspective. So he says instead of you should set your oven to preheat at 425, he says I set my oven to preheat at 425. Right? And like the difference there is key in that like he's talking as himself, like Adam chilling in his house cooking food, rather than like Gordon Ramsay telling you this is how to make the perfect steak.
Yeah.
You know? Like that authenticity almost seems more authoritative. It's more attractive to listen to something like that,
Yeah.
in the way that we're consuming content now.
And I think that's because for so long people were told, like, like the content was controlled by people, like by executives and by big media groups, and they who said like this is what can be on the content, this is what it can consist of, that
Yeah.
you can have this guest, you can't have this guest, you can talk about this thing, you can't talk about that thing. And we're in this new age of content where pretty much like on YouTube and Twitch and in podcasts, like anything goes. Like you can talk about whatever you want. You can pretty much say whatever you want as long as you're not essentially infringing on the rights of others or like advocating hate speech.
Yeah.
And even in certain areas, you can advocate hate speech and they'll just be like, well, nothing we can do about it, like Facebook or Twitter.
Yeah.
You can go on those platforms and do that.
Wild.
Yeah, very strange. But it's like people are craving that authenticity because they didn't have it for so long. Like if broadcast media, radio, TV, they're all locked up in FTC or FCC standards.
Yeah.
That's Federal Trade Commission, Federal Communications Commission
Yeah.
standards.
Of course.
And so it's like, there's just not a lot of like real shit that happens on those shows. Because if you try to get to the real shit, invariably you will insult somebody.
I've always thought it's weird that like news anchors make jokes that aren't actually funny all the time. You know? Like they're not allowed to actually be funny.
Exactly.
That
or
would be
authentic.
off-putting. But like now you can I think the difference is that you can choose your content to a degree of specificity that you were never able to do before.
Yeah. The control is in the hands of the content consumers versus the creators. It's like now that there's streaming, everything's streamed, everything's available, a lot of it's free. Like you can just choose like I'm gonna watch this, or it's really reasonably priced. Like a lot of people have Netflix accounts or they're borrowing Netflix accounts from other people. YouTube is free. You just have to sometimes sit through the ads.
Yeah, man, like catch a 20-year-old dead watching whatever the fuck is on CBS on a Thursday night.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
Who's watching Young Sheldon in the age demographic of 18 to 24?
No.
It's nobody.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, exactly. It's just not happening.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, it's actually kind of hype. It's like I enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot. I think that like. Yeah. It can be dangerous, but I've found a lot of comfort and a lot of community in going to like the niche pockets of the internet where I hang out on like leftist melee Twitter and in the bad melee Discord, and I just chill, and it's like on one hand you could say it's an echo chamber, but on the other hand, like I don't know, it's fun, and I've like met people on the internet who are my friends in real life, and
which has been going on since
wild.
The internet started, right? Like you have always had these dichotomies of like the internet providing very specific groups of people with a place that they can congregate, all the way from like the Sonic the Hedgehog fandom to like I don't know, like white nationalists. Unfortunately, like everyone's got a place that they can go and share their beliefs with people and find people with similar beliefs. But you always you've had that dichotomy of everyone has a place and danger, right? Like there are very dark corners of the internet, and there are dark corners of YouTube too. Like if you let YouTube's algorithm play long enough, did you ever hear about the scandal with the kids videos on YouTube?
Yeah. Well, that's why like the COPA regulations are.
Yes.
Like every YouTube video you upload, you have to specify if it's for kids or not.
Yeah. And like because of that, like there's always been that dichotomy that's been there. I mean, I remember coming up and I was, in the nascent days of the internet with AOL, like being in chat rooms, and like I was always in chat rooms at the age of like 10, like talking to other people and just like communicating and finding community. And I found communities that I stayed in for a really long time. And I mean, the Smash community is really just an extension of that.
Right. And I think that's kind of why it's almost shocking that all of this shit's like coming out in the wash, but like this happens. Cat knocking over my trash.
Leave it. We got to keep going.
This happens everywhere. And I think it's been a little bit unsettling to see people saying things like, oh, well, like the Smash community is just full of like toxic people and abusers and shit. It's like
Yeah.
that. I don't think that should be the focus. I think the focus should be on like well, first of all, what we do about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and that's something that like we obviously have to handle internally, and I don't necessarily think it's fair to say like I don't know, like characterize I don't even want to say that it's bad to like characterize the community based on the actions of those people because like the fact of the matter is that we have had instances where TOs were not acting in the right way about that sort of thing.
Yes.
Like up in Ontario when that TO said that he'd let Nightmare back at tournaments even if he was a registered sex offender, and he was going to tournaments. Like that's so fucked,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Letting Ally back to tournaments, letting Eichelman back at tournaments. Like in our recent history, we have let these things happen as a community,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And so like it's not even fair to say like that's not how our community is because we haven't necessarily proven that yet. But I think the good news is that like we're starting to get our shit together, you know? And like one thing that I've just been going fucking ham in the trenches about like for the past 2 weeks now is the code of conduct panel,
Yeah. You've been
which
kicking the hornet's nest, man.
yeah, which I think is so misunderstood.
It's sad. It's actually it's actually really unfortunate because you and I talked about this the other night that
Yeah.
I mean, all of this stuff that's coming out now proves more than ever the necessity of something like the code of conduct panel.
Yeah, and like I was having an argument with somebody today on Twitter about this. Uh like they were like, "Well, like you're extorting TOs who are not acting against misconduct by using a collective platform of other TOs to like pressure them into making a decision." It's like, yeah, dude, that's how this shit
It's
works.
called a social
That is
contract.
yeah, well it's what like collective action is. It's what a protest is essentially, right? It's like
Yeah.
we're going to gather in a large number to affect the decisions of a small number of people. That's how shit happens
Yes.
in this world, you know? Like it's so wild that I had to like argue that with somebody today. But here I am. And I think a large part of it is like the misinformation that has been I don't even want to say perpetuated because I feel like people aren't reading shit in the first place.
No, people don't read.
Like nobody has taken the time to understand how the code of conduct panel works.
Yep.
And we were talking about like they need some PR,
Yes,
right?
they do.
They need they need people to like they need people to be out here in the fucking streets of Twitter just like hammering this into people's heads, and I've been trying to do that because I think as a TO it's partially like our responsibility to uh to like I don't know, like we have a job to do, you know?
Yeah.
As like code of conduct signatory TOs. Like all of the power in this system rests in us.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of TOs don't necessarily recognize that. If you look at how the code of conduct is written, there are a couple of like important things that if you're watching this, you should make sure your TO knows about. First of all, and this has only ever happened to my knowledge once, and like I started this, right? Is that like you can challenge a code of conduct decision if you have a simple majority of signatory TOs. And that's also like a loose rule, right? There's
Interesting.
no like quorum that you need to get to. Like this happened with the Mafia case, right? Because they let Mafia back after a year of being banned, and a lot of people were upset about it, and kind of justifiably so. This is one of the reasons why now the Code of Conduct panel lists like level 4 offenses, which includes sexual assault, as being lifetime bans for a first offense.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good thing to do. And that's another discussion that we can have. But I think one thing that we need to recognize is like TOs roles, and that's one thing that TOs can do is that if you get half of the TOs to disagree with the code of conduct panel decision, it can be appealed, right? From a TO basis. TOs can also by a simple majority remove people from the code of conduct panel. TOs have pretty much absolute control over the structure of the code of conduct panel. And not only that, but by a simple majority, they can also change the code of conduct itself, right? Nobody knows that TOs can do all of that shit.
Yeah, I mean I didn't know that. And so
Yeah,
and like I'm someone who I advocate for the code of conduct panel because I think it's really important, and
exactly.
I have followed, generally agreed with a lot of their decisions. But yeah, I mean that just makes you realize how asinine it is that there are people, including many tournament organizers out there, who are arguing against this when they have the power to change it if they really want to.
Yeah. And like, I don't want to name specifically who we're talking about here. Like, you can go, like, I had a whole long Twitter thread about it. Like, they're doing something. I don't know what it is. I don't want to speculate about it right now.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it would be fair to, because we haven't like given them a chance to like explain themselves or whatever.
I mean, how long has it
That's
been since you put it out?
I did hear from them,
Oh, okay,
right? So
good.
like they're like, we're in talks with the code of conduct panel.
Okay, good.
Which like on one hand, never mind. Fuck like I don't know. I'm willing to be a little bit patient on that for like a week more or something.
Yeah, yeah.
But like in general, it's like I feel like the reason that I haven't like quit out of Smash Twitter is because people don't know about this shit, you know? And I think part of that reason is because this information, guess where this information is located right now?
Deep within the manual, which I think is probably 500 or 600 pages long if you were to
But
actually print
where?
it out.
Like what domain does it
Oh
exist
my
under?
god, I would like the bottom.
It's smashboards.com, dude.
That's where
It's
that
on
information. It's not on the
it's
code of
on a
conduct panel.
Smashboards post. No,
Oh Jesus.
it's on a Smashboards post where nobody will find it
Yeah,
except for
because
me because I have like bookmarked it and I go back to it.
yeah, no one.
Um
Rest in peace, Smashboards.
yeah. So like
Jesus, really? That's where it's at?
so like yeah, that's they need help, dude.
Yeah.
They they've put this information out there, but they need a lot of help. And that is the number one problem that the code of conduct panel has. It's not like a secret agenda that whatever like bad faith Andy on Twitter thinks that the code of conduct panel has. First of all, there's no way that that can exist because tournament organizers hold the power to change the way the conduct panel works in the first place. You don't have to trust Dr. Piggy. I think you should.
Yeah. I do
But if
too.
you really want something to change, you shouldn't be tweeting at her. You should be tweeting at me and at Steven and at Sheridan and at Matt.Zeb, you know? And Juggle Guy. We're the ones who hold the power to change that shit.
Yeah.
And the thing is that, like, I don't even like think it matters all that much what you call this thing or like what the specifics of it are. Like that signatory list is extensive and it probably has your local TO on it and it probably has the TO of your favorite major on it. I think there are 84 signatory TOs. Like
Yeah.
every one of those TOs signed on to the code of conduct panel because one, they need help gathering information about misconduct in the community. Like we cannot do that job alone. We just went through this process. It's really fucking hard,
It
right?
and the more yeah, and the more people you get, the more cooks you have in the kitchen, the harder it gets because you get so stuck in minutia about, like, should we hear this other person's case or not, and how many resources or
Yeah.
how many sources are there, and what's fair to include and what's not. Like that, I mean, that process that you and I just went through recently, it took a whole weekend. It was a whole goddamn
Yeah.
weekend, and I could barely keep up with it because, again, I've got a wife and a kid that I have to spend time with and take care of, and I would get to it, and there would be over 150 messages by the end of each day of just back and forth on those small minutia things because
Yeah.
we're working internally, and there's not a set code of conduct that we can follow on the internal basis. We can, we can follow the actual code of conduct.
But
And that
like
helps.
they leave and the thing about that is that they leave a lot of room for individual TOs to have agency, and I'll talk about that in a second. But
Yeah.
like, so the first thing is that we need somebody to help us with gathering the information, because we're not investigators here. We are not trained in talking to victims about their trauma,
Yeah.
right? And like, the second thing, and the important conceptual thing here, is that all of your favorite TOs agree that we need some form of collective action in order to be able to enforce rules against misconduct in our community, because of situations like the nightmare thing and the ally thing and the Eichelman thing. Like, we see these TOs out here doing some bullshit, and like, sure, I can like go on Twitter and say that's whack, but like, how much is that going to do? If you
Yeah.
take 84 signatory TOs putting out like a joint statement or something, or each tweeting about like, hey, this TO is like doing something that's blatantly wrong here, and you should like think twice before supporting them or something. Like, that is the important mechanism, and that is why it's important for us to have like a unified voice as tournament organizers in the community for dealing with shit like this.
Yes.
And like, the code of conduct panel as it stands right now actually allows for like a lot more leeway than people think for TOs to make decisions like that. It doesn't exist to get down to the minutia of how long you should ban Captain Zach for. It exists to address egregious cases like Ally, where this person absolutely should not be allowed back in the community ever again, right?
Yeah.
But people are still doing that. People are still having pedophiles come to their tournaments. you know, it's like, if you think that like we should just leave people under their devices, like, we tried that and it didn't work.
Yeah.
And so now all of the most important tournament organizers in the scene agree that we need something to address that problem.
Yeah.
And the biggest problem with that system right now, in and of itself, is not the fact that the Code of Conduct panel has an agenda. Again, that's impossible. The 84 tournament organizers who are signed onto it can set the agenda of the Code of Conduct. The biggest problem is they're not helping with that. And the people who are shouldering this burden are doing thankless, unpaid work.
A theme
Like,
that we've already explored.
they need help.
Yes.
They need help from you. You don't have to do a lot. All you have to do as a tournament organizer is fucking read the emails they send out and talk about it on Twitter. Like, that is the least that you can do, but it is immensely more helpful than what people are doing now, which is nothing.
Yeah.
They just signed onto a mailing list and they delete the emails when they come in. Like, fucking read, please. That's step one, is to just read and understand what you can do under the parameters of the Code of Conduct, and understand what information you have at your disposal, and like, I don't know, like, encourage people to help, maybe. Like, they like, this is such a high priority. It should be such a high priority for us.
Yeah. If we
Like,
want the community to survive, and if we want to actually, like we've discussed, come out of this better on the other side, then yeah, it should be a top priority.
it should be the top priority. And that's why, like, I'm over here like rethinking a lot of the things about how Smash Camp works. You
Oh
know?
God.
Because
Yes.
like, Smash Camp sort of exists in the same space of like, we're letting the TOs do whatever they want under their own principles, without any like outside pressure whatsoever. Is like, when we go to Smash Camp, we're counting on a lot of people to be on good behavior there.
Yeah, we're counting for
We're
a lot of people to do the right thing, and for and a lot of community members. We're kind of counting on there being enough responsible community members that they outweigh the irresponsible ones, just on a
Yeah.
fundamental level.
And on one hand, I think about Smash Camp, and on paper, it's actually probably safer than most majors, right?
Yeah.
Aside from the fact that I guess you could like go out into the, but you could do that anywhere, right? Like, you could just fuck off somewhere, anywhere you go.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, there's a lot of community at Smash Camp, and I think that's what makes it safer, because you have people who are they're rooming together. Like, you have to select your cabins. The cabins sleep a lot of people. It's not like a
Yep.
major where it's only like you can cram 6 people in a room, but like I mean, I've seen some rooms that have gone up to 9 people in a 2 queen bed room somehow. But it's like you're really only there to sleep in the odd hours that someone else isn't sleeping, so that you can go back and keep being on the floor or whatever. With Smash
Yeah,
Camp, like you're there to be with a group of people who you have previously decided to that you want to spend a weekend with, and so you have a built-in group that's there to like a built-in community that's right there for you, because you're in that, like, your cabin's always going to be there, and you're probably going to be hanging out with your cabin all the time, or
yeah,
you're going to go to someone else's cabin. Like, there's not a lot of people just being on their own at Smash Camp. You're always with a group. Even if you go to Smash
that's
Camp
yeah.
and you don't know people, you, by being in your cabin in the classic camp fashion, you will create a group of friends and spend a lot of time with them.
And that's what I was kind of thinking in terms of the rationale that it's actually like safer than other majors in that way. But on the other hand, like it really is the only major where you can just kind of like bring alcohol into the venue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because everything is like under the same roof. Like it wouldn't really make sense, right, for us to say, hey, you can drink in your cabin, but you can't bring alcohol into the venue.
Yeah.
People would just get like really drunk in their cabin and then walk down to the venue. It's like a 2-minute walk, you know,
Yeah.
at most. So like it sucks to make this decision. And like I don't drink, right? So like I don't really care about ruining people's fun in that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Uh, I think it's fine. But like, and I've actually really been frustrated about like how much of this like bad shit that we've seen has come out of like gamer after party culture. You know,
Yeah. It
like
makes me
people
glad
getting
that I did not go
yeah,
to a lot of gamer after parties in my day. Like, I
yeah,
actually tried to go to some gamer after parties, when, especially when I was younger and new to the scene. I was like, I want to go hang out with all the top players, and I'm like, I'm glad I did not do that.
yeah. Like I have so many problems with Evo. You know, like leaving drinks out unattended at an after party is like rule number one, dude.
Yeah.
And like people got drugged because of that at the after party. You know, like we need to be really fucking careful about this shit going forward. Like that's like horrifying,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. That's really
And
scary.
that's like kind of the scary thing about Smash Camp is like regardless of the reality of the situation, everything that happens at Smash Camp is like under one roof and it's under the roof of the tournament. So
Hmm.
like I'm basically faced with a choice now of like making Smash Camp 18 plus or making it like dry. I
Yeah.
think those are the only two things that I can do. And I don't really think that it's right to make it an 18 plus event because despite the fact that I went back and looked at the data, only one person who went to the last Smash Camp would be under the age of 18 by the time the next Smash Camp rolls around. So in reality, this isn't really affecting like almost anyone.
Yeah.
But like, is that what we want? You know, is that the precedent that we want to set for tournaments? And I'm not necessarily saying that every tournament has to be the same as Smash Camp in that regard, because obviously, like I said, like everything's under one roof here, and so
Yeah.
ultimately, like everything happens comes back to Smash Camp. Um,
I think it's a tough decision, though, and that's one of the things that's under discussion right now is should people under the age of 18 be put into a separate competition from people who are over the age of 18? And that's like, and like you said, it's like, is that what we want? Because the youth are, in a lot of the ways, like, they are the future of Smash. Like, it is those kids
yeah,
who come into the scene when they're 14 or 15 years old, and being young, are able to grind the shit out of the game and become extremely, extremely good, and they lead the way to be the next, like, greatest players in Smash. And if you stop them from competing against the players who are already very good until they're 18, they're going to go to college, they're going to find other interests, and they're not going to pursue it as heavily as they might have when they were 15.
yeah, and that's the tough thing, right? Is that as enthusiastic as you know as I am about bringing people into the community, like the way at least the way things were before the Rona hit and before we, went on our hiatus from in-person tournaments, like I don't think I could tell like a woman in good faith that she should come to Smash tournaments. I don't think
Yeah.
given what we know now that I could tell a 14-year-old in good faith that they should come to a Smash tournament.
Or even their parents, for
Uh,
that matter, which I
yeah,
have told a lot of parents of 14 and 15-year-olds that they were safe coming to our tournaments. And thankfully, thank God, for the best of my knowledge, they were safe. And
yeah,
that is something I do want to point out. I never made a post about this on Twitter because I just didn't want it. I didn't feel like I really had anything of value to add to the conversation except to say fuck all this and all the people who did these things. And I was it's just kind of like you let the streets speak for themselves, I think. But I will say that I'm very proud of us as a community in Arizona, that the things that were posted about Arizona were known about and handled way in advance. I feel like we got, I don't know if it's that we had good leadership or we got lucky, or maybe it's just both. But
yeah. And I don't know. It's like even like in some ways, like we're not exempt from it. You know, like I've been doing a lot of introspection in terms of like as a community member, like how could I have done better in situations that would have been uh uncomfortable, I guess, for somebody who doesn't look like me to deal with,
yeah,
And like the thing about those things is that you could kind of fall into this culture of like a boys club where you're like you feel very comfortable with these people and you're like making jokes
yep,
maybe in a setting that is like slightly less than private, that you feel comfortable with and your friends feel comfortable with, but like bringing that into, well, first of all, like doing that in private is kind of its own problem, right?
yeah.
Like,
That's something I've realized as I've thought about this recently is like, you hear a lot of the things that have come out about people joking in like that kind of boys club fashion. And I think back to when I was in college and some of the shit I said to my friends when it was just the 4 or 5 of us at a party. And I'm like, I can't believe that shit came out of my mouth, you know?
yeah, one of the things that like Jeff actually said that I thought was really really interesting. He said a couple of things. Like first thing is that the way that you talk about people and about groups of people in private colors how you interact with them when you're face to face,
Yes.
right? And especially like doubly so when you talk about like community culture. And so like if your discussions that you're having like with your friends have that uh sort of subtext to them, then that becomes something that you bring into your interactions with other people in the wider community. And what happens there, this is the other thing that he said, like what happens when people feel uncomfortable in that way, when they're targeted with behavior like that, uh, is they just leave, right?
Yes.
Like you, as the person who is part of that culture, you don't see anyone like being called out for this.
Mm-hmm.
And so you think that there's like nothing to handle necessarily because of your conflict avoidance or your like complicity
Your complicity,
in
yeah.
taking part in this culture. But the fact of the matter is that those people notice and those people don't help you try to figure it out. Like
Yes.
you should never assume that somebody knows that you're talking in good faith, right? Like
It takes someone stepping up and putting themselves out there to make other people aware of that, and that shouldn't necessarily be the case. And that's something that has happened a lot, and we had this problem with the Smash 4 community um at the end of the Smash 4 days, so like
yeah.
2018, when I had to start an SAK code of conduct, which is just about the time that the code of conduct panel came around, and I had to address it to target really specific stuff involving racism and homophobia that was still running rampant in the Smash 4 community and at my own tournaments. And it's something I regret a lot, not taking action sooner. But a big part of it too was that like I was at tournaments less, but also just like when I came into the scene in 2015, there was the culture of being a hooligan and saying things that are just absolutely inappropriate and offensive was still part of Smash culture. And then
Yeah.
that kind of carried forward, and I did not do the best that I could to come forward and say, like, this is an acceptable behavior, until it was brought to my attention by enough people of just how big of a problem it is. And it's like, you're at a tournament and like you're running the tournament. There's 150 people in the venue. It's loud. You don't know everything that's going on. But I remember there were a couple of posts made by people from Tucson in particular, who bravely kind of came out and said, like, this is not acceptable behavior. The things that are being said at events and at the venue are not, like, that's not okay, and it has to change. And then I went out and changed it, because I did not realize, like you said, like, my complicity prevented me from realizing that it was driving people away. And I have had people of color, people of, like, LGBTQ people who have approached me and said, like, I'm really excited to come back to tournaments now, because I left because of this. And I didn't tell you about it, but I left because of this.
Yeah. And the thing is that, like, part of that culture is the people who are acting in bad faith, right? And not just like you and your friends being complicit in that culture, but like the people who make it a toxic environment to talk about this sort of shit in,
Yes.
especially for the people that it affects. And that is why it's like so incredibly brave for people to talk about their stories, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's hard. Like, you will be sent death threats, and a lot of people on the internet are just like shameful bootlickers
Yep.
who will just, no matter what their favorite guy is accused of, will just DM the most heinous shit to anyone who has something bad to say about their favorite gamer.
Yeah.
And oh my god, like, I know to a certain extent like what I can do better with the people who I know in my community. I feel like very helpless against the mob of people who are out here like defending pedophiles.
Yeah.
I think that, like, that's one of the reasons why the code of conduct is important, is because it will like empower people to just like dunk all over them on Twitter. Like, it empowers tournament organizers to say, like, we are laying down the law about this. I do not care what you think. Like, I run Genesis and this person will never come to my tournaments again.
Yeah.
And Sheridan did say that about Ally, and it was fucking rad. It was great. We need more of this.
Yes.
That is the only way that I can conceive of to like defeat the swarm of like bad faith arguers and people who will just go to bat for their favorite Smash player no matter what happens. Like, we need all of the biggest voices in the community to come out and say, hey, this shit isn't okay. And not only is the shit that these people did not okay, but what you're doing on Twitter right now fucking sucks and is also not okay. And like, if you're going to continue doing that, then we don't want you back, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, you are part of the problem here.
Yep. Put a pin in this real quick. I got to go check on my son.
Okay. Hey, guys. Hey, chat. Hi, Alexi. Anyone hanging out? Drop your Twitch primes. Everyone.
I'm back.
Hello. Welcome back.
It is weird. It is weird that the effect that the Twitter mob has, right?
Yeah.
Like, because a lot of those people who are out there saying that kind of heinous shit and who are DMing that kind of stuff are hiding behind anime avatars, and like they're not like, they're real people because they're sending these messages, but it's not like you can identify them, but they do have a deep impact on people's psyche. Like, the cancel culture and Twitter mobs it's strange how much of an impact they can have on people. Because you could just ignore them. You could just be like, fuck off. I don't care what you think. I don't care what you say. Like, although I do think
Yeah,
with something specific like death threats, anytime someone DMs you something like that, it's going to scare you, even if it's a person hiding behind an anime avatar.
yeah. I find it like really hard to not engage with those people. I, I guess like I know that it would probably be better for me if I didn't, but like I think about the concept of like using your privilege as a shield a lot. I think that there are some conversations that like if you're part of a marginalized group, like you just shouldn't have to justify being your own being treated well like over and over and over again, you know?
Yes.
Like I could see that being very like personally detrimental to someone. And it's like sometimes really hard on the internet to tell whether somebody is acting in good faith or not. Like I like to assume that people are because I think that uh you can kind of change people's minds that way in some cases if they're acting in good faith
Yeah.
and you like have your shit together and you have read the code of conduct. Um but like even you know, even the people who are acting in good faith, I think sometimes like that's not a conversation that a person from a marginalized group can have, you know? And like I don't have that burden in my life, you know? Like I don't want to say that I can like speak for anyone necessarily because I can't, but like I want to be able to like talk about what I know, and even if it's like deep in the replies with an anime avatar that has one follower, like I can't help but just like get in there
Yeah.
and like try to try to fucking dunk on someone, you know? And I don't know, because like the thing that I think about that also is like I could just be from the slime school of like if we have a bad interaction on the internet, I'm blocking you and you are never interacting with me again. But I know that some of these people do go to Smash tournaments
Mm-hmm.
and are like just like quietly, you know, doing their thing and kind of being shitty, you know?
Yeah. Like
That
surreptitiously just kind of being toxic, like in the background.
that is definitely happening out there, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So like I just like really don't want that to be a part of our community, and so I think it's important for me to like say something in these situations. And I think like not everyone has the energy to do that, I guess, or not everyone like feels that it's like their I literally think that it's like my duty and part of my duty in life to do shit like that.
Yeah.
It's like I feel like there is like a moral imperative almost.
To
which
argue with
is
anime avatars
which
on the
is
internet.
yeah. Yeah,
I
which
mean,
is fucking stupid, right?
but I can see where you're coming from when you say that like people in minority groups can't and should not necessarily have to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Like it is kind of imperative of people who are in the privileged position to speak on their behalf. And not to say that you know what they need and what is good for them as a community or as people, but to speak up and defend them
Yeah.
when someone is licking boots on Twitter.
Yeah, like I don't want to like I don't know. Like I would never try to speak about somebody's trauma necessarily or anything like that, like delving deep into the I don't know. Like I don't want to like psychoanalyze people or anything, right? Like
Yeah.
that's not my I don't know shit about that. Like I shouldn't be talking about that. But what I do know about is like parasocial relationships where people are worshiping other people for being good at a video game. Like I basically have a degree in that. I've seen it so many times before in so many egregious situations that it's like, all right, here we fucking go again,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I remember, man, like smashers just cannot help themselves with shit like this. Like over Triforce got banned on some really like heinous shit, right? And like one of the top replies in that thread is like, "Oh man, bummer. He had a sick Sheik." Why even bring it up in the same breath, dude? Can you not help yourself for like 5 seconds? Like, we are trying, adults are trying to talk here, dude.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need you to be talking about the video game all the fucking time. You're adding nothing to this conversation. That shit pisses me off.
Yeah,
I
but
hate
I think
that.
maybe the sentiment that's being expressed there is I enjoyed this person. It's the Cosme sentiment, right? I enjoyed this individual, and now I feel bad that I am no longer allowed to enjoy them.
Yeah, but I was thinking about that also because I saw today, I was like, I, I watched the Sky Williams stream for a little bit and I went back and I was like, I wonder what he has said on Twitter since then.
Is the VOD
And I
still up, or
saw,
did it get deleted?
I don't know.
That was some
That
dark
shit was
shit.
wild.
I
That was
can't. Well,
horrible.
that whole story, that the Sky Williams story, is one of the things that like I can't fucking believe that one. I
Yeah.
The dude owes almost as much money to people as he has followers on Twitter.
Yeah,
Like,
dude.
it's
Lying
in,
about your dad having cancer to borrow $55,000 and never give it back is like, but the thing is that
and
there are still people out there in the replies that are like, what's the deal with not giving people second chances here? And it's like, dude, unfortunately, like none of these people are ever going to see jail time, right? Like some of them deserve to see
that's
jail
true.
time.
Not that is one of the weird things. Like, one of the insane things about all of this is not a single person in any of this is going to see jail time.
There will be no like restorative justice from a legal sense,
Yeah,
right? For any of these people. And that sucks. But on the other hand, like I will stop watching Game Grumps if somebody, like I stopped watching Game Grumps because other good gaming content came along, right?
yeah.
Like it's not hard. We were talking about like the Smash community having to like replace a bunch of people after this. It's not hard,
No,
you
it's
know?
not. Yeah, there's a lot of people
Like
out there that want to be in those positions.
yeah. Like we're not throwing Sky Williams in jail for this, you know? We are not taking away his right to work or
Or
his,
vote, or
or vote
exist.
or yeah, or anything. We just don't want to watch his content anymore. We don't think he should have a platform. He shouldn't have a platform. He's a shitty person, dude.
Yeah,
He did some really bad shit. And if you're still watching him at this point, then like what are you doing? Honestly, like people will be kicked to the curb for far less in this business and in entertainment in general, right?
yep,
So like just like think about that for a second. Think about like the grand scheme of things here. Like nobody here will have like the justice that they deserve. And so the
yeah,
least that we can do is just wash our hands of that shit and say like, "Hey, maybe you shouldn't interact with this community anymore. The way that that's gone in the past has not been good. Like go on about your life, unfortunately,
yeah.
but
That
like
was someone posted that on, and after Sky posted his like initial like tweet where he was like his initial tweet longer where he basically was like, I owe people so much money and I'm sorry and I'm a terrible person, but I'm going to start paying them off. And then once I've paid them off, I want you to decide if I should still have my platform. And someone responded,
no.
they just said, dude, just admit what you did was wrong and drop off the internet. Just go away. Like, don't,
Yeah.
like, no one, it's just no one wants you here anymore. No one wants you in this community. No one wants you to have a platform. Like, you've lost. You blew it. Go on
Yeah.
with your life.
Fuck off.
Yeah.
Right? And like that's the least that we can do, you know?
Yeah.
And that is why I think that things like the code of conduct panel making sexual assault of a lifetime ban first offense is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
We're not a court of law here, you know? What happens if you let an abuser continue in the scene is that you ban the victim. You
Yes.
know? That's just the way it is. taking away someone's ability to go to tournaments for a children's party game is so small and so minuscule. And it like part of this is like, so there's half of this, right, that's on the front end that we need to have conversations with our friends about the culture that exists in our gaming community.
Mm-hmm.
The back half of it is that if people do shit that is, abusive in like, I don't know, in like a whole bunch of different ways. Like that is something that we can and should like remove people from our community for at least temporarily,
Yeah.
Like I am kind of the belief that like we should err on the side of like banning people for credible allegations that obviously within reason,
Yeah.
uh and like the code of conduct is also helpful in giving us this information and helping us like have a framework for what action we should take. But like you can do all of the shit that you need to do on a personal level, and you can be like better, but you really don't have to do that like in the Smash community.
Yeah.
There is a lot of like the big fear is that like we put our faith in someone and they burn us again,
Yeah. The number one bad faith argument that you see is that is the well, they should be innocent until proven guilty argument.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
Like that's the number one thing that you see people on Twitter like, and I like, to your knowledge, has there been an instance where someone was falsely accused in all of this? Has there been any false accusations? I don't know of one personally.
Like patently false?
Yeah, where it was like the person was accused of something they absolutely didn't do, and it turned out that it was just someone trying to get them. That's the number one thing.
It has happened before. Like I think the faux situation back in like 2018.
Yeah, it certainly has happened.
Case.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was one thing actually that had to do with like Arizona Melee that came out about West Balls that was like at least partially misunderstood.
Yeah.
I would say it was, that was not a good thing.
But I'm talking about an instance where a person comes out as a victim and says, I was a victim of this other person, and then that person ends up to be completely lying. Like, has there been any instances that you know of? Because again, that's the number one bad faith argument is people come out and they say, well, this person could be lying, and because they could be lying, we should, let them be innocent until proven guilty. But
I don't think I've seen that.
Yeah, my argument is that it always ends up being true. It always ends up being true.
There's very little reason for somebody to falsely accuse someone in that way.
Well, and go on.
The cons, I was just going to say, the cons so greatly outweigh the pros.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say, is the amount of shit you will have to go through for accusing someone like that. That's why half of these women who have come out in the last couple of weeks have been anonymous, because not half, but like a good amount of them initially come out anonymously because they know there's going to be massive backlash that they're going to face.
Yeah. And it's not like there's going to be like monetary gain for them to have, like there could be in situations with like actual famous people.
Well, because again, there's no recourse. There's no justice in these situations. No real justice.
Like, nobody is going to be paid hush money by DJ Nintendo. No.
No.
Like, that's just not gonna fucking happen. So yeah, like it's important in a lot of ways to realize that like the way that we have to act is not the way that a court of law has to act. Due process, for example, is something that I've seen people cite before. It's also like free speech, is something that a lot of people like to throw around on the internet in ways that don't really make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
I've been accused of slander twice now by Smashers. They don't know what it means.
No, slander is spoken.
Slander spoken, libel is printed. Libel's written.
Yeah.
Yeah. As J. Jonah Jameson said.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah. But yeah, like it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating.
It
The
is.
bad faith Andes out here are like getting to me. But as I said, it's bookended by like very amazing melee things happening. So like my hope is that we can start to do the work and then reap the benefits once we, go back to playing this amazing game in a way that is, more like what we're used to.
Yeah. When do you think that's going to be?
I don't know, dude. Whenever the vaccine comes out,
So like late next year.
I don't know if it's going to be late next year.
I don't know, man. I mean, like isn't it's like the fastest trial, the fastest vaccine that they've ever put through has been like 18 months, I want to say.
Yeah. We better start revving it up.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. I saw a poll today for like some town's Facebook that like 60% of the respondents said that they wouldn't take a coronavirus vaccine.
Why?
Jesus Christ.
Yikes.
It's a whole uh anti-intellectual movement,
It is. It is an anti-intellectual movement. I heavily agree with that.
Yeah.
There is this entire thing of people just not listening to science. It's an anti-science and an anti-intellectual movement. And
Yeah.
at the risk of falling too heavily on one side of the political argument, or like one side of the party line or the other, you saw this during the Bush administration as well. There was a very specific anti-science, anti-education bent throughout that whole 8-year period. And it was like once that ended, we entered into this like beautiful renaissance of like people actually thinking science is valid again and that it's real, and you should get your kids vaccinated, and math is important, and kids should understand how to read. I don't know, man. It's weird.
There are sort of like new age lefties who are like anti-vaccine also.
It falls on both sides for sure.
Yeah, like climate denial though is something that is like very heavily politically skewed, I think, and that is just mind-boggling. There are so many things, dude. So many things that like 97% of scientists agree on that people will just not listen to.
What about those 3% though, Mike? They've got a reason for not believing.
They're dumbasses. They should have their medical licenses taken away. And they probably will.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. But it is like there is this kind of, I mean, the fact that we're in this situation to me is just, it boggles the mind that we are where we are today. Because people,
the simulation's getting weird.
It is. It's getting dark. And it's just because people can't stop giving a shit about themselves long enough to like give a shit about other people. Like wearing a mask is a great example of this. I'm in the mask gang. My wife, also my whole family, we mask up anytime we leave the house pretty much.
Absolutely.
And I fall under the belief that like if you're in an open space, you don't need to be wearing a mask running. I hear stories about people that wear masks when they go running. And I think that's a little much. Like, I don't think you need to be doing that. As long as you're out in the open air, like science has shown that being in enclosed spaces is what's dangerous, because eventually the amount of particulates in the air, the ratio of viral versus non-viral particulates gets to the point where you're going to get infected.
Yeah.
But wearing a mask is so easy. And you don't even notice it after a certain point. You forget it's even there.
It looks fucking cool.
It does. Everyone looks like a badass.
Yeah.
You can customize them. I have Harry Potter and Avengers masks. And every time I go to Dutch Bros, I get a compliment.
I need to get my shit custom, dude. I need to find something. But yeah, you're right. And I try to be like at least a little bit optimistic about this shit. Like, I think despite all of the momentary bad stuff that's happening, it's still, all things considered, like the best time to be alive as a human in the world, in the history of the human race. It's amazing. The internet is fantastic.
Yes.
If you use it right.
Yeah.
Like,
Do not. Certain parts of it are not fantastic.
yeah, infant mortality is at an all-time low. Uh, we just have a couple of kinks to work out. The wealth disparity is real fucked.
Yeah.
Coronavirus is not good. But I don't know. I tend to be like optimistic about this sort of shit.
Yeah.
So
You've
like,
you've
yeah,
always been like a pretty like worldly individual and an intellectual thinker. You got your bachelor's in political science, right?
yeah, I have it right back here.
Nice. And all the good it's doing.
Yeah, and it's spelled correctly this time.
Is it? It's not
so
Laos.
No, yeah, they fixed it. They fixed it for me.
But it is interesting because you've always been someone who I would talk to about not just politics, but like you said, like the wealth disparity and stuff. Like that stuff is on your mind a lot, and you think about it a lot.
Yeah, I think that informs a lot of like how I think about tournament organizing, also in particular, and like my place in the community. I think that like there is an inherent political element to what we do, you know, and a lot of people like to ignore that, but I think that it's unignorable. And yeah, it informs like my entire life. And not only did I get my degree in political science, but like I got like an interdisciplinary studies degree with concentrations in political science and civic education. And civic education is like really heavy on like personal political autonomy and like personal political engagement also. And so that really informs a lot of like how I think about the way people should act in communities, both like their greater community that deals with actual politics and like the inner politics of like smaller communities that they're a part of.
How do you mean, like, what do you think is the political tint to what we do? Like, what is political about what we do as TOs? And
Well, I mean, I think like the
do you mean that in the sense of like the wider body politic of the U.S., or specifically that we have to make decisions that are unpopular and deal with a political environment?
Yeah, I think the latter. I think that it's like the code of conduct argument is like a good example. Like this, like I don't know, the thread that I made about VGBC. We'll say it. Fuck it. The thread that I made
you
about
put it
VGBC
on Twitter.
is, yeah, you can see it anyway.
We're not speculating.
Like I don't want to put, the thing is, I don't want to put a whole lot of pressure on Gimmer because I know that this has been like personally difficult for him. So like he has expressed that, and I think that should be respected, obviously.
Yeah.
The reason that I said that was like very much informed by that sort of line of thinking. Like we need collective action to be able to make shit work in the way that it does.
Yeah.
You know, like every TO that is signed on to the code of conduct should, and I think to a certain extent does, realize that that is the case. You know, like we have platforms that we can use to affect decisions that are being made. And like we should be actively using those to benefit our community. I think that like you cannot just find yourself in a position of sitting back and playing the video game and thinking that that's okay enough. Like there is bad shit that happens in this community, and it will continue to happen unless we do something about it. So that I think is kind of how that manifests itself in terms of the Smash community.
Yeah. All right, brother. I think what we're at, like an hour 45 minutes flew by, dude.
Yeah.
So that was great. I appreciate you joining me. This is a nice conversation.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And good luck out there on the battlefield. And I will try to join you more. I actually deleted Twitter from my phone. I did that the last weekend, that one weekend, and I told you about it. And then I was like, I actually like this so much because I have this really bad habit with Twitter, man. And I think everyone has this problem. Is you get bored and you take out your phone, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like, I'll just scroll through Twitter, and invariably you see something that pisses you off.
Yeah.
Like it's just like I open that app every time, and it's just like a screaming hellhole is what awaits me. And I finally got to the point where I was like, why do I keep doing this to myself?
Yeah.
It's just not worth it.
Well, here's the two things I'll say about that. First of all, is like you can't help people until you are yourself in a place where you can like function, you know?
Yeah.
So like there is something to be said for like doing shit for your mental health. Two is that the retweet button is your friend. And like even if you think that maybe you don't have something to say, like you don't have a twit longer to make that will be helpful and add to the discourse in a way that you think will be constructive, like amplifying other people's voices is just like a button push away, and it helps a lot.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this, go out and, amplify voices and help people be heard. And if you're a TO, if you haven't signed onto the code of conduct, consider signing now. And realize that if you're an organizer for any game or anything or any event or any sport, there is a certain amount of inherent responsibility that comes with that, whether you like it or not.
Yep.
And I think going forward as a community in Smash, the biggest thing that the community is going to have to do is turn to its leaders, and its leaders will have to step forward and make the changes necessary. And if you are an organizer, you're a leader. If you're a streamer, you're a leader. If you are on your PR, you're a leader. And even if you're just an O2 Andy, you're a leader.
Yeah. If you're an O2 Andy, ask your tournament organizer if they know like what power they have under the code of conduct. Like talk to them about this shit. I know that like all of the tournament organizers pretty much that I've talked to across the country are like concerned about this. They might not all be engaged on quite the same level, but they will like listen for the most part. And if you don't know that they'll listen, like have that conversation with them. Like you deserve an answer as a player.
Yep.
Like ask them like one thing that I've wanted to like make very clear lately is that like if somebody has a problem about something that happens in the Arizona Smash community, something happens regarding somebody in the Arizona Smash community or at one of my tournaments, like I will listen and I will take it seriously.
Yeah.
And I can't like force anyone to talk to me, obviously. Like I know that a lot of people deal with stuff like that in many varying ways. And I just want them to know that like if they feel like it would be helpful, that I will listen and I will take it seriously and I will act upon it. And so have that understanding with your TOs. That's what's important for you to do as an O2 player.
Yeah, and
as pot filler
and TO. Yeah, if you're pot filler, and TOs need to make sure that people know they have an open door policy. I've had a lot of people who have come to me in private and talked to me about things and asked me to correct things. And there have been things that have not been in my jurisdiction. But there have been a lot of things that have been. And it doesn't have to be a gigantic, dramatic experience where, there has to be a post made and the person's called out publicly and then you have to come out as the victim and all that. Like you can just talk to your TO, say, this is what happened. Here's the evidence I have. Here's people you can talk to, and let the TO sort it from there. And if you don't want that responsibility as a tournament organizer, you probably are in the wrong game.
Yeah, man. You have to do it, right? Like I said, like you can't just play the video game. That's not how this shit works.
My wife and I got in a fight like 2 weeks ago because she's like, I was trying to tell her just a little bit about what's been going on, but I hadn't been telling her a lot. And she was like, I cannot listen to you talk about the Smash community anymore. She's like, I can't do it because every time you do, you're just talking about somebody raping somebody or molesting somebody or harassing somebody. She's like, I just can't listen to it anymore. And I told her, I was like, this is my job. Like, dealing with this is a part of my job description, and it's not the part I signed up for, and it's not the part that like I want to do, but I have a responsibility to my community to deal with these things. Yeah. And I told her I respect her not wanting to hear about it anymore, and I don't talk to her about it anymore. But like, when you sign up, Like, you sign up for the whole thing, and I think a lot of people don't realize that when they get in there. But over the years, I've had to have a lot of conversations with the TOs from who came before me and ask them, what to do in certain situations, because I did not ever anticipate when I first started running tournaments that I would also be responsible for the well-being of upwards of 500 or 600 people, and that my decisions would impact people in that way, and people would come to me looking to protect them from these issues.
Yeah.
But
right.
you have to do it. Doesn't matter if you run a 3-man local or if you run Genesis, you got to do it.
Absolutely.
So, all right. That's it, brother. You have a good night.
Bye. You too.